What would you do if you had 30 seconds to save your children's lives, knowing it would cost you your own? Have you ever felt that primal instinct to protect someone you love? Can you imagine making a split-second decision that determines who lives and who dies? Do you trust the people teaching your children every day? Today's case will shatter everything you think you know about evil hiding in plain sight. A family's perfect hiking trip became their final moments. A trusted educator became their killer. And the most disturbing details, they're just coming to light. If stories like this make you think differently about safety and trust, hit that subscribe button, because today's case will change how you see the world around you. Clinton Brink was 38 years old when he made the biggest decision of his life. After years in South Dakota, he packed up his entire world and moved his family to Arkansas. Fresh starts don't come easy, but Clinton had a vision. He wanted something better for his wife Kristen and their 3 daughters. Kristen, 37, was everything you'd want in a mother and wife. The kind of woman who made everyone around her feel special. She had this infectious energy that lit up every room she entered. Her daughters, aged 7, 9, and somewhere in their teens, were her entire universe. The Brinks weren't just another family. They were the family everyone wanted to be. Clinton worked hard to provide. Kristen poured herself into their daughters' lives. One of their girls played volleyball, and you'd find Kristen cheering from the sidelines at every game. They were building something beautiful together. Arkansas represented hope, a new chapter. Clinton had found stability, and the family was thriving in ways they never had before. They'd left behind the harsh winters of South Dakota for something warmer, something filled with more possibility. July 26, 2025, was supposed to be one of those perfect family days. You know the kind, the ones that create memories your children talk about for decades. Clinton decided they should explore Devil's Den State Park, all 2,500 acres of natural Arkansas beauty, hiking trails that wound through forests, streams that sparkled in the summer sun, the kind of place where families bond and children learn to love the outdoors. But here's what terrifies me about this case. Evil doesn't announce itself. It doesn't wear a sign or send a warning. Sometimes the most beautiful places become crime scenes. Sometimes the most perfect days become your last. The Brinks had no way of knowing that their decision to spend quality time together would intersect with a monster's carefully planned attack. They couldn't have known that someone was already there, waiting, prepared to destroy everything they'd built. How do you protect your family from threats you can't see coming? How do you prepare for evil that's been planning while you've been living? What happened next at Devil's Den State Park proves that heroes aren't born. They're revealed in moments when everything depends on their choice. Clinton saw him first. The man in black moving toward his family with deadly intent. In that split second, Clinton made the choice that defines every parent's nightmare and every parent's dream. He stepped between the attacker and his children. The attack was swift and brutal. Clinton didn't have time to call for help. He didn't have time to run. He had time for one thing: to be a father. The attacker struck him down, but those precious seconds Clinton bought made all the difference. Kristen's world exploded into chaos. Her husband was down. A stranger with murder in his eyes was advancing. Her daughters were terrified and exposed. In that moment, every mother's instinct screamed at her, "Save them." She grabbed her 2 younger daughters, the 7-year-old and 9-year-old, and made a decision that would haunt and inspire everyone who heard this story. Instead of running, instead of trying to save herself, she found a hiding spot. She pushed those little girls into safety and told them to stay hidden no matter what they heard. Then Kristen Brink did something that still gives me chills. She went back. She knew what was waiting for her. She knew she was walking towards certain death, but she also knew that every second she could draw the attacker's attention away from that hiding spot was another second her daughters might survive. Arkansas State Police Major Jeff Drew later said something that cuts straight to the heart of what happened. They absolutely protected those girls to the fullest extent, to the point that it cost them their lives. Think about that. 2 parents, in the space of maybe 30 seconds, made the ultimate sacrifice. Not because they were trained, not because they had weapons or backup, but because love demanded it. Before we reveal who did this and why, pause and think about the courage it takes to face death for your children. If this story moves you, share it with someone who needs to hear about real heroism. Kristen never made it back to that hiding spot. The attacker killed her, just as she knew he would. But those two little girls, aged 7 and 9, stayed hidden. They stayed silent. They survived because their parents' love was stronger than one man's evil. When park rangers found them hours later, they were still hiding, still traumatized, still alive, because Clinton and Kristen Brink understood what being a parent really means. Within hours of discovering the bodies, Devil's Den State Park transformed from a family destination into a crime scene. Arkansas State Police shut down the entire area. 2,500 acres of wilderness became the center of one of the most intensive manhunts in state history. The tips started flooding in immediately. Over 500 calls from people who had seen something, heard something, or felt something was wrong. And here's where the first disturbing details emerged. Details that prove evil has a presence people can sense even when they can't explain it. Multiple witnesses described the same man, tall, wearing all black clothing, but it wasn't just his appearance that stuck with people, it was his eyes. Witness after witness used the same phrase, death stare. They described looking at this man and feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. One family said they'd been hiking earlier that day and passed a man who made them so uncomfortable they actually changed their route. They couldn't explain why, but something about him felt dangerous. That's your instincts working, folks. That's your brain picking up on predatory behavior before your conscious mind can process it. But the most disturbing detail was what investigators found when they started piecing together witness statements. This wasn't a random act of violence by someone having a mental breakdown. This was planned. This was calculated. This was a predator who had prepared for this attack. Witnesses reported seeing a man with duct tape covering his license plates. Think about that for a second. You don't tape over your license plates unless you're planning to commit a crime. You don't prepare to hide your identity unless you know you're about to destroy lives. And then there was the mesh bag. Multiple people reported seeing him carrying a large mesh athletic bag. The kind of bag that could hold, what? Rope. Restraints. We may never know what he originally planned to do with that bag, but the implications are terrifying. The man had been methodical. He'd chosen his location carefully. He'd prepared his equipment. He'd concealed his identity. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a calculated attack by someone who had done this before or had been planning it for a long time. What haunts me most about these witness statements is how many people felt that something was wrong but didn't know what to do about it. Multiple families reported feeling bad energy from this man. Parents actually moved their children away from him instinctively. Trust your instincts about dangerous people. If someone makes you uncomfortable in a way you can't explain, there's probably a reason. Your subconscious mind picks up on micro-expressions, body language, and energy that predators give off. Don't ignore those warnings. The manhunt intensified when investigators realized they weren't just looking for someone who had snapped. They were hunting a predator who had carefully planned the attack on the Brink family. The question was, where had he gone? And was he planning to strike again? 4 days. For 4 days, Andrew James McGann thought he'd gotten away with murder. While Arkansas State Police worked around the clock, while a community mourned, while 2 orphaned children tried to process the unthinkable, McGann went about his business as if nothing had happened. On July 30, 2025, he walked into Lupita's beauty salon in Hot Springs, Arkansas, like any normal customer needing a haircut. He sat down in Adriana Ruiz Avalos's barber chair and made small talk. But Adriana noticed something that still gives her nightmares. His eyes were empty. Completely empty. She later told investigators that she'd never seen anything like it. They were soulless. While she cut his hair, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong with this man. What McGann didn't know was that his face was already plastered on wanted posters across the state. Someone in that salon recognized him, and within minutes, law enforcement was on the way. Here's what's truly disturbing about his arrest. McGann didn't run. He didn't resist. He didn't even seem surprised. When Arkansas State Police surrounded Lupita's beauty salon, he cooperated calmly, almost like he'd been expecting this moment. Think about the mindset of someone who murders 2 parents in front of their children, then casually goes to get a haircut 4 days later. That's not normal criminal behavior. That's the behavior of someone who compartmentalizes violence in a way that should terrify every parent. The barber, Adriana, said something that still haunts investigators. "I've cut hair for 20 years, and I've never felt evil sitting in my chair until that day." She knew. Somehow, she knew she was touching the hair of a monster. But McGann's calm cooperation was just another disturbing detail in a case full of them. This wasn't someone consumed by guilt or fear. This was someone who thought he'd covered his tracks well enough to avoid consequences. The anticlimactic nature of his arrest, sitting in a barber chair, getting a routine haircut, shows how predators move through society. They don't look like monsters. They don't act like you'd expect killers to act. They blend in. They appear normal. They get haircuts and make small talk, while families grieve the lives they've destroyed. McGann's arrest location tells us something crucial about his psychology. He was so confident in his ability to evade justice that he was maintaining his appearance and routine. That's the mindset of someone who has either done this before or believes he's smarter than law enforcement. The barbershop arrest wasn't just the end of a manhunt. It was the beginning of revelations that would shock everyone who thought they understood this case. Once Andrew James McGann was in custody, the evidence against him didn't just mount, it avalanched. Every piece of forensic analysis pointed to one horrifying conclusion. This man had planned everything, and the Brink family had been caught in a carefully laid trap. The DNA evidence was overwhelming. Blood found in McGann's Kia Stinger matched the crime scene, but it wasn't just blood. Investigators found hair fibers and other biological evidence that put him at Devil's Den State Park during the murders. But here's where things get really disturbing. During his initial questioning before he was even formally charged, McGann started inflicting wounds on himself. He scratched and cut his hands until they bled. Investigators believe he was trying to create an alternate explanation for any blood evidence they might find. Think about that level of calculation. Even after arrest, even facing overwhelming evidence, he was still trying to manipulate the investigation. That's not the behavior of someone overcome with remorse. That's the behavior of a predator trying to protect himself. The mesh bag witnesses had reported. They found it. And while investigators haven't released all the details about its contents, the fact that it was listed in search warrants tells us it was significant evidence. What was he planning to do with that bag? The implications are too disturbing to fully process. But the most chilling moment came when McGann was read his Miranda rights. After being informed of his right to remain silent, after being told that anything he said could be used against him, he chose to confess. This wasn't a confession born of guilt or a desire to help the investigation. Law enforcement sources describe it as cold, calculating, and completely devoid of remorse. He admitted to the murders like he was discussing the weather. Search warrants executed on his property and vehicle revealed additional evidence that remained sealed by the court. But the fact that investigators requested and received multiple search warrants tells us there was much more to discover about McGann's activities and preparations. The evidence painted a picture of a man who had methodically planned an attack on a family he'd never met. The question that haunted investigators was simple: why? What could possibly motivate someone to target the Brinks? The answer, when it came, was more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. Andrew James McGann wasn't just any 28-year-old drifter. He was a teacher, a man who had been entrusted with children's safety and education, a person who parents had trusted with their most precious possessions. But McGann's teaching career tells a story that should have been a massive red flag to every school district that hired him. He was a job hopper, moving from state to state, district to district, with suspicious frequency. He'd taught in Texas, he'd taught in Oklahoma, he'd taught in Arkansas. Always elementary school, always around young children, and always, it seemed, there were reasons he needed to move on to the next position. The most disturbing detail. At the time of his arrest, McGann was scheduled to begin teaching elementary school in the Springdale School District. Dozens of children were supposed to be under his supervision in just a few weeks. How many background checks failed to catch this man? How many administrators signed off on hiring someone who would later be charged with brutally murdering 2 parents? How many red flags were ignored because school districts needed teachers? This represents a systemic failure that should terrify every parent in America. The man who methodically planned and executed the Devil's Den murders had been given access to classrooms full of children across multiple states. Think about the children he taught before July 26, 2025. Think about the parents who trusted him with their kids' education and safety. Think about the playground supervision, the one-on-one tutoring, the after-school activities where he had unsupervised access to vulnerable children. The pattern of McGann's employment raises questions that may never be fully answered. Did he target teaching positions because they gave him access to potential victims? Was his frequent job hopping a way to stay ahead of suspicions or complaints? How many warning signs were missed by administrators who just needed to fill classroom positions? FBI profilers and child safety experts have identified several red flags that parents should watch for in educational settings. Teachers who frequently change districts without clear advancement reasons. Educators who seem overly interested in spending time alone with children. Staff members who have unusual knowledge about students' family situations or home schedules. Anyone in education who displays an excessive interest in children's personal lives beyond normal academic concern. McGann's background exposes how fragmented our education system's safety measures really are. A teacher can leave one state under questionable circumstances and find employment in another state without proper communication between districts. The Brink family murders weren't just a random act of violence, they were committed by someone who had been given access to hundreds of children across multiple states. Someone who had been trusted by communities to educate and protect their most vulnerable citizens. How many other McGanns are out there right now, moving from district to district, hiding their true nature behind the respected title of teacher? This is the part of the case that will haunt you long after you finish watching this video. Because the truth about Andrew James McGann's motive is worse than random violence. It's worse than robbery gone wrong. It's worse than anything you might have imagined. FBI criminal profiling expert Jennifer Coffinduffer analyzed the evidence and came to a conclusion that changes everything we thought we knew about this case. Clinton and Kristen Brink weren't the targets. Their daughters were. Let that sink in for a moment. A 28-year-old man methodically planned an attack on a family not to rob them. Not because of some personal grudge, but because he wanted access to their children. The evidence supports this horrifying conclusion. McGann's tactical preparation, the black clothing, the concealed license plates, the mesh bag, the careful planning, wasn't designed for a quick robbery or even a double murder. It was designed for an extended encounter with specific victims. Think about what this means. McGann likely spent time observing families at Devil's Den State Park, looking for the right opportunity. He may have watched the Brinks arrive. He may have followed them to an isolated area. He may have been planning to abduct those children before Clinton and Kristen's heroic sacrifice disrupted his plan. The randomness that everyone initially assumed wasn't random at all. It was opportunity. McGann was a predator lying in wait, and the Brink family unknowingly walked into his trap. This explains the mesh bag. This explains the elaborate preparation. This explains why he chose a location like Devil's Den State Park. Isolated areas where families with children might be vulnerable. The most terrifying realization is how long he may have been planning this type of attack. His pattern of moving between states, his employment in elementary education, his selection of Devil's Den as a hunting ground. These weren't coincidences. Jennifer Coffinduffer's analysis suggests McGann may have been escalating toward this type of attack for months or even years. His access to children through teaching positions may have been feeding fantasies that eventually led to the planned abduction at Devil's Den. Clinton and Kristen Brink didn't just die protecting their daughters from a random killer. They died disrupting a predator's carefully planned attack on their children. Their sacrifice didn't just save 2 lives. It prevented an unthinkable crime against 2 innocent little girls. The tactical nature of McGann's preparation suggests this wasn't his first time planning such an attack. The question that haunts investigators is whether it might have been his first time attempting to carry it out. How many other families might have unknowingly crossed McGann's path? How many other children might have been potential targets during his years of moving between states and school districts? The truth about his motive transforms this case from a tragic murder into something far more sinister, the disruption of a predator's plan to harm children, prevented only by the ultimate sacrifice of 2 extraordinary parents. The Devil's Den murders might not have been Andrew James McGann's first kill. As investigators dug deeper into his background, they uncovered connections that suggested a pattern of violence spanning multiple states and potentially multiple victims. In 2020, John Schmutzer was found murdered at Devil's Lake State Park in Wisconsin. The similarities between his case and the Brink murders are chilling. Both involved state parks, both involved isolated hiking areas, both involved victims who appeared to be targeted randomly. The FBI has now opened a multi-state investigation into McGann's activities. They're looking at every place he lived, every school where he taught, every state park he might have visited. What they're discovering is a pattern of movement that coincides with unsolved violent crimes. McGann's teaching career provided him with the perfect cover for traveling between states. Teachers are trusted members of communities. They have legitimate reasons for relocating. They have access to information about local families and children. They know school schedules, family routines, and community events. How many other state parks might McGann have visited during his years of moving between Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Wisconsin? How many other families might have crossed his path during hiking trips or camping excursions? The expanding investigation has revealed something even more terrifying. McGann may have been perfecting his methods over years. The tactical preparation evident at Devil's Den suggests someone who had thought through every detail, someone who had learned from previous experiences. Federal investigators are now reviewing cold cases in every state where McGann lived or worked. They're looking for unsolved murders, missing persons cases, or violent crimes that occurred near state parks or recreational areas. They're examining whether his teaching positions gave him access to information about local families that might have made them targets. The possibility that the Brink murders were part of a larger pattern of violence is both terrifying and oddly hopeful. Terrifying because it means more families may have suffered. Hopeful because it means their deaths might help solve other cases and bring justice to other victims. What's particularly disturbing is how McGann's legitimate profession provided cover for his potential criminal activities. Teachers are often involved in community events, field trips, and outdoor education programs. They have legitimate reasons to be familiar with local parks and recreational areas. The investigation has also revealed gaps in how information is shared between states regarding problematic educators. McGann's ability to move between school districts without triggering red flags exposes systemic weaknesses in how we protect children from predators who infiltrate educational systems. As federal investigators continue to expand their review of McGann's activities, one question haunts everyone involved. How many other victims might there be? And how long was he planning attacks like the one that killed Clinton and Kristen Brink? On August 1, 2025, Andrew James McGann made his first court appearance to face charges for the murders of Clinton and Kristen Brink. The man who had calmly cooperated with his arrest now sat in shackles, facing the very real possibility of execution for his crimes. Prosecutor Brandon Carter didn't mince words about his intentions. This is a death penalty case. The premeditated nature of the murders, the heinous circumstances, and the impact on the surviving children all support the state's decision to seek the ultimate punishment. The strength of the case against McGann is overwhelming. DNA evidence ties him to the crime scene. His confession provides clear admission of guilt. Witness testimony places him at Devil's Den State Park with suspicious equipment and behavior. The physical evidence found in his vehicle corroborates every aspect of the prosecution's theory. But pursuing the death penalty isn't just about punishment. It's about justice for Clinton and Kristen Brink, and protection for society from a predator who showed no remorse for destroying a family. McGann's calm demeanor during his court appearance disturbed everyone present. There was no emotion, no apparent remorse, no recognition of the magnitude of what he had done. He sat quietly as charges were read, as if the proceedings were about someone else entirely. The legal proceedings will likely take years to resolve. Death penalty cases require extensive investigation, expert testimony, and careful consideration of every aspect of the crimes. But the evidence against McGann is so comprehensive that legal experts believe conviction is virtually certain. What makes this case particularly strong for prosecution is the combination of physical evidence and McGann's own confession. Defense attorneys will likely focus on mental health issues or attempt to negotiate a life sentence to avoid execution, but the tactical preparation evident in the crimes undermines any claim of mental incompetence. The surviving Brink daughters will need to live with the knowledge that their parents died protecting them and that their testimony might be needed to ensure justice. The legal system has a responsibility to handle their involvement with extraordinary care and sensitivity. For the community of Arkansas, McGann's prosecution represents more than just accountability for 2 murders. It represents a test of whether the justice system can adequately respond to predators who infiltrate trusted positions to harm families. The death penalty debate often focuses on abstract concepts of justice and deterrence. But cases like this remind us why capital punishment exists, to remove from society individuals who pose such an extreme danger that no other response is adequate. 2 little girls, ages 7 and 9, are now orphans. Because of Andrew James McGann's calculated evil, they survived the attack that killed their parents, but they witnessed horrors that no child should ever experience. They heard their father's final moments, they felt their mother's desperate love as she pushed them into hiding. They stayed silent in that hiding spot, while a monster destroyed their family. The community response has been overwhelming. A GoFundMe campaign raised over $24,000 in just the first few days to support the girls' immediate needs. But money can't replace parents. Money can't erase the trauma of witnessing your mother and father murdered by a stranger. These children will need therapy, support, and care for the rest of their lives. They'll need family members or foster parents who understand the magnitude of what they've survived. They'll need a community that continues to wrap them in love and protection long after the news cameras have moved on to other stories. Devil's Den State Park has been forever changed by these murders. Families who once considered it a safe destination for hiking and camping now think twice before visiting. The park has increased security and surveillance, but the innocence of the place has been lost. The Arkansas State Park system has implemented new safety protocols in response to the murders, increased ranger patrols, improved communication systems, and enhanced visitor screening, are all part of an effort to prevent similar tragedies. But the reality is that no amount of security can completely protect families from predators who plan their attacks as methodically as McGann planned his. The randomness of his target selection means any family could have been the victims. The community support for the surviving children represents the best of humanity responding to the worst of it. Schools, churches, businesses, and individual families have all stepped forward to offer help. But the long-term support these girls will need extends far beyond financial assistance. They'll need adults who can help them process their trauma without being overwhelmed by it. They'll need therapy that acknowledges both their incredible survival and their devastating loss. They'll need protection from media attention that could re-traumatize them. Most importantly, they'll need to know that their parents died as heroes. Clinton and Kristen Brink's final act defined what it means to love your children unconditionally. Their sacrifice saved 2 precious lives and prevented McGann from completing whatever horrific plan he had developed. The community response also highlights how random violence affects entire regions, not just immediate victims. Parents across Arkansas are now more vigilant about hiking trips and family outings. The sense of safety that allows families to enjoy outdoor recreation has been shaken. These ripple effects are part of McGann's true impact. He didn't just murder 2 people, he terrorized an entire community and traumatized countless families who now see danger where they once saw beauty. The Devil's Den murders aren't just another true crime story, they're a wake-up call about threats hiding in plain sight, and the extraordinary courage ordinary people can display when evil strikes. Trust your instincts about dangerous people. Multiple witnesses at Devil's Den State Park felt bad energy from McGann before the attacks occurred. Families changed their hiking routes because something about him made them uncomfortable. Parents moved their children away from him instinctively. These weren't coincidences. These were people's subconscious minds picking up on predatory behavior. Your gut feelings about dangerous people are usually right. If someone makes you uncomfortable in a way you can't explain, there's probably a reason. Don't dismiss those feelings as paranoia or prejudice. Your brain processes micro-expressions, body language, and energy that predators give off even when they think they're hiding it. Teach your children to trust their instincts too. If an adult makes them feel uncomfortable, they should tell you immediately. If something feels wrong about a situation, they should remove themselves from it. Predators often test boundaries with small violations before escalating to serious crimes. Parental heroism defines unconditional love. Clinton and Kristen Brink's final acts show us what it truly means to put your children first. In 30 seconds, facing certain death, they made decisions that saved 2 lives. Clinton stepped between the attacker and his family. Kristen hid her daughters and then returned to draw the killer away from them. These weren't trained law enforcement officers or military personnel. These were ordinary parents who found extraordinary courage when their children's lives depended on it. Their sacrifice reminds us that heroism isn't about superhuman abilities. It's about choosing love over self-preservation. Every parent should ask themselves, what would I do if my family faced immediate danger? Having a plan, even a basic one, could make the difference between life and death. Discuss emergency procedures with your family. Identify safe spaces and escape routes. Practice staying calm under pressure. Systemic failures enable predators. Andrew James McGann moved between states and school districts without triggering adequate background checks or raising red flags about his pattern of job hopping. This represents a systemic failure that endangers children across the country. Parents must take responsibility for researching the adults who have access to their children. Don't assume that schools or organizations are conducting thorough background checks. Ask specific questions about hiring procedures, supervision policies, and safety protocols. Research your children's teachers, coaches, and activity leaders. Look for red flags like frequent job changes, vague explanations for relocations, or excessive interest in children's personal lives. Trust your instincts if something doesn't feel right about an adult in your child's life. Vigilance in education is essential. McGann's position as a teacher gave him access to hundreds of children and detailed information about family schedules and routines. This case exposes how predators can use legitimate professions to gain access to potential victims. Stay involved in your children's education beyond just homework and grades. Know who has access to your kids during school hours. Ask about supervision policies for one-on-one interactions. Understand how background checks are conducted and what information is shared between districts. Watch for warning signs like teachers who want to spend unusual amounts of time alone with students, who seem overly interested in children's home lives, or who know more about family routines than seems appropriate for their role. Community responsibility solves crimes. The 500 POS tips that poured in during the manhunt for McGann demonstrate how community cooperation can help law enforcement catch dangerous criminals. Every witness who reported feeling uncomfortable around him contributed to building the case against him. If you see something suspicious, report it. Don't assume someone else will call it in. Your observation might be the detail that helps solve a case or prevent a crime. Be specific about what you observed, when you observed it, and why it concerned you. Support families affected by violent crime in your community. The financial assistance for the Brink daughters is important, but ongoing emotional support will be crucial for their healing. Violence affects entire communities, and recovery requires collective effort. The hidden nature of evil must be acknowledged. McGann appeared to be a normal member of society. He was educated, employed, and trusted with children's safety. He didn't fit the stereotype of what a killer looks like, which is exactly what made him dangerous. Monsters don't announce themselves. They often hide behind respectable facades and professional titles. They blend into communities and build trust before revealing their true nature. This reality should make us more vigilant, not more paranoid. The most dangerous predators are often those who have learned to mimic normal social behavior while harboring violent fantasies. They study how to appear trustworthy while planning attacks on innocent victims. The Devil's Den case provides clear guidance for protecting your family. Research thoroughly. Before allowing any adult regular access to your children, conduct your own research, check social media, ask for references, and trust your instincts about their character. Teach recognition skills. Help your children identify uncomfortable situations, and give them permission to remove themselves from danger. Practice what to do if they feel unsafe with an adult. Stay involved. Don't delegate your children's safety to institutions. Stay actively involved in their schools, activities, and social interactions. Know who has access to them and when. Trust community instincts. If multiple people express concerns about an individual, take those concerns seriously. Community intuition about dangerous people is often accurate. Support affected families. When violent crime strikes your community, the support victims' families receive in the first few months often determines their long-term recovery. Advocate for change. Push for stronger background check systems, better communication between institutions, and increased accountability for those who work with children. The Devil's Den murders remind us that evil exists in our world, often hiding behind familiar faces and trusted titles. But they also remind us that love is stronger than evil, that ordinary people can display extraordinary courage, and that communities can unite to protect their most vulnerable members. Clinton and Kristen Brink died protecting their daughters from a monster who had planned to destroy their family. Their sacrifice saved 2 precious lives and exposed a predator who might have harmed many more children. If this story has opened your eyes to hidden dangers in our communities, I need you to do 3 things. Like this video to help others find these crucial lessons, share it with parents who need to hear this, and subscribe to True Crime Seat for more cases that could protect your family. Your engagement helps these important stories reach the people who need them most. The Devil's Den case isn't just about one family's tragedy, it's about all of our responsibility to protect the innocent and honor the heroes who sacrifice everything for love.